us. Let's call this greatest common factor. Long dramatic pause for somebody to close the door. Okay, I'll see if I can do this better than I usually do, which would not be hard. Greatest common factor. You remember doing this from past times?
I remember the name.
You do remember the name. Greatest. Ooh. I think I've found the new way to write the next memory time. Write all of the words going sideways. So you have to write like this. There. Four. Sorry, that's one word. There is no. Remind me of that. That'll be fun. Common factor. Now, you remember this, ladies and gentlemen, from back in the day when you were asked to do this. Find the GF or GCF of 18 and 24. Now, many times people get greatest common factor mixed up with least common multiple. Okay, we are looking for factors here, so that should help you out. And back when you were little children, I said you had to do this back in 5th and 6th grade. You had to write down all the factors of 18. 1 and 18, 2 and 9, 3 and 6, and 24 is 1. 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, 4 and 6, and then the greatest one they have in common is, drum roll please, 6, right? Is anybody with me, please? Just show some sort of like participation nod or dramatic pause or gasp or something. Now, where the train goes off the tracks and derails is when you're asked to do this. Find the greatest common factor of. Apparently, somehow, somewhere along the line, things get derailed when we start adding letters. 6a squared b cubed and 8a squared b squared c. 8a squared b squared c. Anybody want to jump on board what the greatest common factor of those two expressions would be? It would be much more helpful if you just stare at it and look quizzically at it. When somebody sits there and look quizzically at it, like, Emma Miller was going to say what?
A to the a squared.
Huh?
A squared.
A squared is your answer. Anybody agreeing with Emma Miller on that? Come on, she very well could be right. Oh, thank you for making her feel that she's not. Anybody want to jump on board what they think the greatest common factor of that? Zachary!
6AB.
6AB.
No.
Like it. Oh no.
I agree.
Fish says yes.
I'll be very.
Aaron?
We go down together.
You're just admitting defeat right off the bat? Okay, so since none of you, Clausing's looking at it contemplatively. Wait, oh, she's looking in the book. I like that initiative. You can always look in the book. That's actually where we're going to go. All right, I am going to listen very carefully. No, don't. Keep your book closed. You don't need to look. The book will be distracting for most of you. Most of you can't multitask in that way. I don't think she can. All right, listen very carefully to what I'm going to say. I am going to break it down to you in the most basic sort of way. In the end, when all the smoke clears and Connor Morgan wakes up from his mid-afternoon nap, you won't have to do this. Well, some of you will continue to always have to do this. Some of you will just, it'll come like, you'll just look at it and go, I understand that. and I can't change what that is. So here's the deal, write this down. It won't always be this tedious. After we do this, some of you will look at it and go, that's too easy, I can do that without doing that. Some of you won't. Right. Number one, here's what you need to do. The first thing you have to do is prime factorize both things, or all of them. There sometimes could be three. Prime factorize. Again, like I said, it will not always be this tedious, but please follow along with me on this. For example, 6a squared b cubed. If you break this down into its prime numbers all the way down, you get 2 times 3, that gives you the 6. Hopefully that makes sense to you. You get a times a, that gives you a squared, righto? You get b, please write, times b times b. That is 6a squared b cubed, all the way broken down to as much prime numbers as you can. If you do the same thing with 8a squared b squared c, you get, what's my 8? 2 times 2 times 2. A squared is a times a. B squared is b times b. And c is just c, right? Yes. Good. Then, step number 2 is you must 1 for 1 see what factors they have in common. Hence the reason for common factors, which is part of the name there. So, that's probably easier shown than said. What do they have in common? Well, they both have 1, 2. This one doesn't have a second 2, nor does this have a 3. So they don't have any 3's in common. They only have 1, 2 in common. Okay? They have 1a and a second a in common. This one, oh, no, I guess they both. What do they have in common for b's? Well, they both have 2 b's in common.
No, the first one has 3. Oh wait, yeah.
Pretend somebody didn't just say that. Again, and that's the key, Madison, is they have to have it in common. They both have to have it. They don't both have 3. And they don't both have a C. And then step el numero tres is you need to remultiply what you get. Which means you get 2a squared b squared. That is your least common multiple. I'm just going to let that sink in for a little bit. Wait, whoa. First, maybe I did something wrong. I always get when people start raising their hands like that, unless it's Amy Fox, then I don't. Yes, Emma Miller?
So I have 2 questions. The first one is, shouldn't that 8a squared b squared c, shouldn't that have 4 2's? Does that have 3 2's?
No, because 2 times 2 is 4 times 2 is 8, is it not? You're not dividing by 2. It's 2 times 2 would give me 4. I mean, if I were breaking it down tree form, which I'm a little past, you get 2 times 4, and then 4 is 2 times 2. I just kind of skipped a little bit of the tree business.
Okay, and then why is it least common multiple, not greatest common factor?
Wait, did I say least common? Did I say least common? No. Oh, yeah, sorry. You're right. This should be greatest common factor. You are right on that. Sorry. That is a huge, greatest common factor, not least common multiple. Good catch. So,
How do we do that? The 2 b's.
how many B's do they have in common? How many did I circle? Okay, now, should I do another one before I just tell you the gist of this? Alright. What, they want me to do another one before I tell you that you don't have to do that?
Yes.
Alright, let's do one more.
Yeah.
Let's go with 3. Let's go with something that's got 3. If I can find one that has 3. No, I'll just pick one out of the book. 5p squared q to the 5th r. 5p squared q to the 5th r and 10p q squared r squared. 10p q squared r squared, did I say?
Yeah.
I don't remember what I said. So following the rules, pretty simply it's this. Factoring this out, you just get 5 times p times q times q times q times q times q times r. And 10 is 2 times 5 times p times q times q times r times r. Yes, prime factorization works for everybody? And then what do they have in common? They have a 5. They both have 1p. This one has to be. One q and the second q and 1r. That's what they have in common. The key word there is common. That's where most people get mixed up. Not just that they have it, but that they have it in common with the other one. And then when you remultiply, it is 5p q squared r. Now, Chase, do I have permission to ask you to think about this a little more simply? All you are doing is taking the group that has the fewest or the smallest exponent that they have in common. In other words, this. Your choices with the p's, you have a p squared and a p. The smallest, fewest number of p's would be that one. This has 5 q's, that has 2 q's. The fewest is 2. This one has only one r, that has 2 r's, so you take one. You take the one that has the smallest. They both have to have it though. I mean, if this had a t in it, it's not a common factor because they don't even have 1 in common. But when they have a letter in common, you take the group that has the fewest of them. Let's look at that in light of something a little more difficult here. Did I go too fast for you, please?
No.
24m to the 3rd, n to the 5th, and 18m n to the 6th. Now maybe in your mind you can just envision all the work that we just did and it'll come to you clearly. Between 24 and 18, I always like to think about this. If I had a fraction that had 18 and 24 in it, what would I reduce it by? What's the biggest number that goes into both of them? 6. That's its greatest common factor, and number-wise. And then you look at the m's. If I wrote all of them down, this would have 3 m's times themselves. That has 1 m times them. What do they have in common? Just 1. The one that has the fewest of them. Because it doesn't have 3 of them. And then this one has 5 n's, that one has 6 n's. What do they have in common? They only have 5 of them in common. That one doesn't have 6 of them, so you can only take 5 of them. You're looking for what they both have, and if one of them doesn't have it, you can't take it. I don't want to put a damper on your thought process here, but we do get to least common multiple, which is very similar to this, but really different. Does that make sense, Jason? Very similar, but really different. Now, lest you think that is all there is, children, the reason why you do this, Andrew, is because they're going to give you an expression and ask you to factor out the greatest common factor. That's usually where people gasp. Please gasp. No, gasp. That was a gasp. Was like, oh, gasp. If you're gasping for breath, wait,
Gas is like
wait, is gasping exhaling or inhaling?
A gas is like
Close it with your thoughts.
big sigh, exhale.
I am thinking gas is exhale.
Maybe we can do it on one.
There's gotta be a different, what would be inhaling?
Now we're all consciously really breathing.
A gas. No, it's not in the dictionary. Well,
Shocking.
it's, oh, look, well, it says to draw in or catch the breath sharply. I guess it is drawing in. But then it says say in a breathless way, which would be exhaling. To breathe laboriously or convulsively. Huh. Anyway, so this is the deal. The reason why you're going to do that is they're going to do this. They're going to give you this expression, and they're going to ask you to factor it out. Now, going back to last year, that's the same thing as when we would do something like this. Do you remember having 12x minus 6, and they said to factor it, and we'd say, oh, I can take a 6 out of that, and I end up with 2x minus 1.
Yes.
We had nothing but conversations with the 7th graders for the last 3 weeks about that. Well, you are going to do the same thing as this, except with that really crazy big thing right there. So let me just rewrite the same thing down here, because you already did most of the work. 24 m to the third n to the fifth plus 18 m n to the sixth. And you were asked to factor. Well, step number 1 when you factor is to find the greatest common factor, which that already was. We already did that. So I put my 6m n to the fifth, just like 6 was my greatest common factor I could take out of both of those. Well, in this one, it's 6m to the fifth n. I have to put a parenthesis, and then I have to take that stuff out and see what I'm left with. If I take a 6 out of 24, divided by that, I'm left with a 4, because 4 times 6 is 24. Okay. I need to go from m and get back to m to the third, so how many m's am I missing? 2 of them, because m times m squared gives me m cubed. N times what gives me n to the fifth? It's already there, so you don't want to put another n there, because that would give you n to the sixth. So to get this first term, I would multiply these two together. And I have to go do the same thing for this. To go from 6 to 18, I need a 3. I already have the 1m, so I don't need to multiply by any m's, but to go from n to the fifth to n to the sixth, I need one more n. So this would be that factoring thing. How about that? Fish, what do you think?
It's good to see.
Verse 22, can you say it to me now?
Something shall be running day and stuff like that.
Something about growing in pain.
I cannot get it.
Don't worry, I'm not done, Madison. Well, but if you could point to me to what part you don't get. Did you not get the greatest common factor part, or did you not get factoring that out? Where's 3n? Alright, Madison. This is the term I'm looking at. What do I multiply 6 by to get 18? Or what do I divide 6 into 18? 6 goes into 18 how many times? I need to get 18 when I multiply 6 by something. So that's where the 3 comes from.
So does that have to do with the exponent?
Not the 18 doesn't. The rest of it does.
But then how did 4m get a square?
What's 4 times 6?
24.
So that's where this comes from.
Then how did you get
M times m squared gives me the m cubed that I need that I started with,
then why did n not get?
because n was already n to the fifth. If I put another n there, then it would become n to the sixth, and that's not what I started with. I started with an n to the fifth. I didn't need to multiply this by an n to get where I started from.
So what's
Joseph, your thoughts? Fish!
Fun fact for the day.
Oh gosh.
Okay.
No. Class, because I've never heard fun fact.
No, I mean,
No,
get confused.
So, alright, so you know pi? Like 3.14, no.
This comes from your mom, because she says this stuff all the time.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay, well, Jace is special. It has pie on his body. In between his between the eyebrows, he's pie. Like, it's weird.
Yeah, look at
Weird.
it.
Look at it. It's
Wait,
pie.
wait,
Like,
wait,
it's
what?
almost exact. Like, he's.
Like the same?
Yeah.
You're making fun of my scar when I fell
he
off
get-
the bed.
He filled out 3.14
Eighth grade memory
Oh.
pile.
Wait,
Chase.
I see.
Wait, Chase, what? How do you?
Ah.
He fell
He fell off a bed when he was younger. Now he's
All right, Madison, for you.
Okay, because I jumped.
Ready?
Wait, I'm writing down the answer.
8. Let's see how many people get this. 8d squared e cubed plus 12d cubed e squared. 12d cubed e squared. And the directions say to factor, which is reverse distributive property. And if you don't get this, you are in great company. Because most people don't right off the bat, but after being beat over the head with it numerous times. The first thing you have to do is find the greatest common factor and write that down. Between 8 and 12, between d squared and d cubed, between e cubed and e squared. Right. Jackson just had a revelation.
No, I was a little confused, but now I know how to do it.
Wait, the light switch just came on?
Ding.
Wait, you're done? You can't be done.
No, I'm not.
Factor. Now, understand that as well. Fish made a great point. If you say factor, that's a two-part thing. Number one, you gotta find the greatest common factor, and then you have to factor it out. If I just ask you to find the greatest common factor, that just means you pull out the greatest common factor. You don't have to do the rest of it. But I said to factor, so you have to do both. Find the greatest common factor, maybe I'll help you out with that. Between 8 and 12, the biggest number you can take out of those is a 4. You can't take a 6 out of 8, you can't take a 12 out of that. If you have a d squared and a d cubed, the most you can get out of them is d squared, because that one doesn't have d cubed. You have an e cubed and an e squared, so the most you can take out is e squared. So that's your greatest common factor. And then you're going to need to put the parenthesis, or opening parenthesis, closing parenthesis, and see what times that will give you what you started if you take those out. Huh?
How do you think that's 4?
Which 4?
Oh, that's right.
Here, let me ask you this question, Connor. If I had a fraction that had 8 over 12, and you were reducing it, what number would you reduce it by? That's where that 4 came from. It's the biggest number you can, it's the biggest number you can take out of both of those. You could have said 2, but then I'd say, well, it's not the biggest number you could take out. So that's what you're thinking about.
So,
I'm not done yet, so if yes?
If you took a 2 out of both those, would the answer be?
Your answer would be wrong because you would not have factored out the greatest common factor. You would have factored out a common factor, but your numbers over here would not be right. You always want to do the greatest common factor if they ask you for that. And that happens frequently as well. Everybody's done? Look at that. So, here's the deal. In here, I have to put what I multiplied this by to get that, or what this divided by that is. It's the same thing. To go from 4 to 8, I need to multiply by a 2. D squared is already there, I don't have to worry about it, but I need to go from e squared to e cubed, so I need an e.
E squared.
Wait.
To go from
Start over.
Look, Madison, d squared is d times d. D squared is d times d. I already have all my d's I need. I don't want any more d's. They're already the same. This one only has 2 e's, but this one has 3, so I need one more e to put with this one to get back to that where I started from.
but then why did you put?
What?
What?
Can you start over, please?
Wait, are you really?
Yeah.
I'll go back. For which point?
2B. I got the 4d d squared e squared. I had that, and we'll give it that. Just the parentheses or parentheses included.
The thing you put here is what, when you multiply these together, gives you this. So 4 times what? 4 times what gives me 8. That's 2. The d squareds are already there. This has 2 d's, that has 2 d's. If I put another d there, that would make this d cubed, and it's not. To go from e squared to e cubed, I need one more e squared.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. Thank you.
And then to get, now this one here, I need to put what times this will give me this for my second thing. So 4 times what gives me 12, or 12 divided by 4. Either way you look at it, it's 3. This only has 2 d's, but this has 3, so I need to put another d there, so when I multiply it, I get 3 d's. This already has 2 e's, that already has 2 e's. I'm done. This is
I'm probably still gonna get it wrong.
that factor.
Me too, should do one more.
Oh, don't worry.
But it makes sense. I get it.
The worst part about this is not really, we're not even close to being what the real reason we're doing this for.
What?
I know, that's why I'm not going to go any farther than that. Here, let me give you one. How about this? Well, should I give you one that has 3 terms in it? Yeah, let's do
You
that.
should give us the hard one.
6 14 x y squared z squared plus 8 x y
Oh no.
z.
It's in the minus sign.
Wait,
This is actually not that hard.
Not if you can count, Jackson. 6x squared yz minus 14xy squared z squared plus 8xy z cubed.
Are we factoring or breaking back?
Oh wait. Okay, I think I got it.
And while you think about that, go get your Spanish. So when this is whoever gets here,
Senora Alvarez.
Senora Alvarez gets here. You are ready for this class. Because I don't. She doesn't like to wait. She said she only gets it for 20 minutes. I will give you the answer to that after Spanish.
I don't even know what's happening.
Wait, you have a question? I like questions. Oh, yes. So you have 6, 14, and 8.
We worked on it together, so I said yes.
That was really easy. Wait, Chase, let me see the star.
No! He fell down for each of my last
No, I fell off a bed. And many more.
He fell down for each of my last
Yes, and many more.
Chase, that was important. I can't understand. I got it. I got it. I only see on mine. No, it's looking like
Yeah, why am I learning this? I thought, wait, isn't that just subtraction anyway? All you need is subtraction. Negative 2,000. Like times 15. Like why can't you not do like times 15?
I'm most likely to
No.
Sweating, growing.
No.
Yeah.
That's just weird. Okay, let me try. Emily, it's completely wet. Whoa.